living in Michigan then. And I came home on vacation, well, I guess several days after they dug it up. And he also...
But your dad saw it?
Yeah. And anyway, when they were putting the road in, they knocked the top of the skull off.
Could we walk down to the place where you think it's closest to?
The trench started right about here. And we dug it up, I guess, about 20, 30 feet. Found, the trench was about that deep.
Okay.
About that wide. And we spent quite a bit of time being very careful as we dug it up. We thought at first it might be an Indian burial.
Right.
But then we started digging farther.
You actually saw bones?
Oh yeah, we found complete skeletons. I say complete. We found fragments of at least 17 bodies. There were no metal in them except the bullets in the bones. There was no sign of material. The cloth had obviously been buried, stripped. The only thing we could find from digging up what was in their stomach, just really well preserved. We could see where they'd been eating straw and hay and things like that. Amazing. And I always wondered why...
That didn't decompose after all those years.
Yeah, but apparently it being on top of the hill where the water's drained off.
Right.
And as you see, this red clay is very little organic material in it, which would cause decomposition. They were very well preserved. And like I said, the bodies were just tossed in. There was quite a bit of difference in the skeletons. Remember, one guy must have been close to 7 feet tall because his femur was about that long.
Okay.
And let's see, what else do I remember about it? Like I said, they just topped in on top of each other and like they'd been thrown in the trench. There were several mini balls in the skeletons. The most unusual thing we found was a hunk of lead about that big around. And it was in the collarbone right here. And when we found it,
shell fragment possibly.
I assume. I never have understood exactly what it was. It wasn't a mini ball, just a big hunk of lead about that big. And it fractured the collarbone or splintered it. It was right there.
How deep was it? Or how
It was embedded in the bone.
was it circular?
No, it was more oblong shaped. Right like that.
Oh.
Now, Estes, who was at this Memorial Museum at that time,
Right.
came out and was out here. He took that and put it on display, and it was in the Memorial Museum for many years until they moved to the new location.
Do you know if it made over to the TPAC location?
I have no idea. I've never seen it since they moved. I've only been to the new museum once or twice. I haven't lived in Nashville since.
Did they have any of the bones on display also, or just this piece of metal?
No, the collarbone that the lead was in was on display along with it.
Okay.
So it was a piece of bone about that long. And I think it's from here to here.
But as far as you know, the 17 bodies in this...
They're all there. We just put them there, covered them up, except for what Estes took.
So you all covered them back up yourself?
Yeah.
Who actually dug?
Me.
You actually dug it up yourself?
Yeah. By training, I'm a geologist.
Okay.
And amateur archaeologist. And of course, once we got into it, we realized what it was.
And how deep were the bones from the surface, you think?
2 feet.
Oh, well, we should have hit it right here then.
Should have hit it right there. What little documentation it is. The date on this is 56.
Okay. That makes sense with the records for the development of the subdivision.
Yeah, and here's a contract of loan. Estes came out, Fred Estes. I'll give you a copy of this.
Okay.
But Fred Estes came out and was here with us while we dug it up. I'm a sword collector, and I've had dealings with him before. I gave him some Civil War swords and stuff. But at any rate, he came out And like I say, took that piece of the collarbone with the big hunk of lead in it back to the museum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, lead bullet.
But what he says here, instead of saying, yeah, fossils and rocks.
You know why?
Yeah, I know why. Because they didn't want any record of any skeletons.
Police report. So there was never any police investigation of the bodies?
Not that, once we knew what it was, as a Civil War remains. My dad didn't want anybody coming out here to dig it either.
Was this about the time the interstate went through here? Was that?
Seemed like it was before.
Yeah, I'm thinking
just about before, somewhere in there. I don't think the interstate was here quite at that time, but they were working on it.
Do you know if they uncovered anything when they put the interstate through here?
No, I don't. They probably did, but nobody was aware of it. Because, as you said earlier, there was no big amount of knowledge about the battle out here.
Well, now, if they had investigated this, I wonder if that would have blocked the development. Certainly would have slowed it down. Would that have been a motivating force?
Could have been.
Yeah.
It could have been.
Because they could have ended up unearthing bodies from here all the way to the river.
Yeah.
And the police would have.
Well, I don't think people were that interested in it in '56.
Yeah.
See, that was only about 91 years after it happened.
Yeah.
And I mean, people were interested, but they weren't protective of it. There was no mention made of skeletons in here or Civil War or anything.
So nothing after that was ever discussed or surveyed?
No, that was the end of it.
And Fred Estes...
There's a copy of the envelope. And he even got my dad's name wrong on here. Which he called George Miles instead of Ralph Miles.
Yeah. That's interesting. At what point did he actually come out here?
When we started to dig it up, we called him and let him know we were going to do it.
So he came out to
well, I take that
supervise
back.
it? Or?
Take it back. At first, we didn't know whether it was a Civil War or Indian. The skull. Bullet was unearthed. So we dug up, I guess, that far and realized what it was then, and called him, and he came right on out.
So you all hit 17, stopped after 17 bodies?
Yeah, fragments of 17 bodies. It could have, been a little bit more or less, but that was about what I remember.
Okay. No,
we're going back 40 years, like.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no. No buttons, so that
there wasn't a piece of metal in there.
Okay. Well, the reports that I heard was that the bodies were stripped for some reason, maybe even burned.
I had no sign of burning. There was no charcoaling or black. The bones were pretty white. They were fairly competent. They've been there for 90 years. Coherent.
Any flesh still on?
No flesh. But
see, I found a femur over there in the woods that was white marked. White flags
are for.
The
bodies. So I don't think they'd been burned. You can see, in the dirt. You can see the top of the trench. You can see outlines. The difference in the dirt. It was just amazing how well preserved that stuff was. And I thought, that was 40 years ago, 90 years after the battle. We handled those bones as we dug. We took out the bones one by one and laid them out on the ground until we got through digging, realized what we were doing.
Who else assisted you?
My brother. Okay. He's a lawyer in Washington now. and Estes. My brother and I did the dig at Estes West. He was a guy about my age, an old guy. But anyway, we dug very carefully using paintbrush and trowel. You can see the outlines of parts of the body in places, as I mentioned earlier. You can see where the stomach was, what was in the stomach, straw, hay. The bulldozer knocked the top off the skull, I guess, right about here, 10 feet either way.
Okay.
There.
If you had to run a reference point, what from here would you say?
Oh,
I know it's hard to.
Probably right about towards the corner of the house. Maybe a little bit more this way.
See, what confused me when my brother talked to your mother in the late 80s, she pointed to what he said was a
cedar tree.
Cedar tree which I was thinking was that one.
It wasn't that one. It was right here. I cut it down 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
And when you said cedar tree, I realized.
Well, there was one here until just recently also.
Yeah, that was the one that she was talking about.
Okay.
But the trench would have stopped. As near as I can tell now, we dug it up from about right there where we found it. Say from right about here. Somewhere right about here. And it was still going.
And it looked like to you that was a trench, a military.
Yes, it was about that wide, about that deep. The skeletons were about that far below the surface, piled on top of each other.
Because normally after the battle they just roll them into the trench and bury them, but since this was cavalry, Ross Massey was a little skeptical of the fact that they would have had trenches here at all, but they certainly had enough time to build them.
They had a trench. I mean,
it was definitely.
I don't think they would have dug the trench after the battle.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they were dug in out here. Well, maybe Horn's book says that they were dug in. But at any rate, yeah, I'm sure that was a trench.
Okay, so if something's going to be found, it's probably going to start about right here.
Yeah, start about probably 10 feet either side.
Yeah.
But another trench like the one they dug out there, right about, so right through here, hard to hit it. Say from the edge of the driveway out to here.
Of course, they're not going to do that now, since we've already dug once.
Yeah. But incidentally, I volunteered to come up here when the archaeologist said he was going to dig, and he said no need. He didn't want me up here.
They knew. My feeling was they knew where it was, and they knew where they wanted to dig, where they wouldn't.
But I was going down to the museum and see if they had that stuff, but I didn't get a chance. I'm coming back. There were trees, big trees back around the house. But from where that second telephone pole back, this was all open field.
Okay.
And, you can see this road right over here called Shallow.
Was this cultivated before your family took?
Yes.
So it'd been a working farm for quite some time.
See that back road, Shallow sign over there? We named that street Shallow because of all the remains of the battle we found up here.
Say about 100 mini balls and all.
That's what I kept. I plowed up. I kept the good mini balls. I didn't keep the misshapen ones or the half. I just kept the whole ones that were nice.
That awful. It's the first major loss of cash.
We found a whole bunch of mini balls up here. From here all the way back to that second telephone pole down there.
Okay.
And yet at the time we knew of no battle out here.
Well, this would have been the back side of the hill. Again, they're coming
from that way.
This way.
They would have hit back in here.
I ought to talk to some of these people. I bet people.
I asked these people here about 10 years ago if we could use a metal detector. All kind of fortifications, trenches back along this trench.
So there's nothing left there.
No. You notice this was showing you.
Right.
And, this little spring back here never went dry.
Yeah, I've known this guy since I was 4 years old.
The creek would dry up, but the spring never went dry.
Were there entrenchments over here too?
No, I never found anything in this field out here. This was an open field at the time.
Oh, okay.
Can you see the creek right there?
Yeah. Yeah, it looks like a stone wall.
The spring is just right down there. There is water in the creek there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the spring right there.
Right here?
See where the water starts?
Over here?
See it's running right there in front of you. Look 5 or 6 feet in front of you, see where it's running?
So you think it comes up right there?
It comes up about 5 or 6 feet in front of you. I can see the water running out from right here.
Well, there's some seepage over here.
I can see water running from where I was standing back there. You can't see it from here though. It's coming out right there. Running down.
Mm-hmm.
The water staying there is coming out of this creek and this never goes dry.
Huh.
It didn't go dry in the 50 years we were here.
Yeah, so this would have been a good place to be.
Now this little branch here runs into Davidson Creek. So I could see them watering their horses on this creek back in there where they were staying.
Yeah. This is all the natural.
Yeah.
There's some